He's the American Cincinnatus, the American Fabius, the town destroyer, the father of our glorious country. May I present to you George Washington! And with that little dramatic introduction out of the way, let's begin. As cliche as it sounds, George Washington is the father of our country and deserves the most proper presentation. His life starts out being born on a cold winter morning on February 22nd in the year 1732. He spent the early part of his childhood on his parents' plantation farm, which resided in the British colony of Virginia. Fast forward a little after his school career and we find George Washington became a surveyor. He examined land throughout the colonies. And then, we get to see the scars.
You want to know how I got these scars? You want to know how I got these scars?
Washington and his brother were on a surveying expedition migrating to the southern colonies. He unfortunately caught smallpox. He survived miraculously, but now has permanent facial scars because of it. Well, that's all well and dandy, but let's flash forward to where Washington became known as General Washington. Believe it or not, he was not the perfect general everyone praises him for. He became general of the Virginia militia in December of 1752, but he was captured by the French at Fort Necessity on October 31st, 1753. Other than that, everything went smoothly for Washington. He went through countless promotions, and by that time he was 23 years old, leading all of Virginia's troops. Gee, what a guy. And then, of course, he falls in love and marries Martha Dandridge. Oh, but that's not all. Angered by unfair British acts, Washington prepares for war. Boy, is it a doozy. The balance of power shifted between the two sides many a times. The British took New York, leading Washington across the Delaware River, and then Valley Forge made Washington's army suffer thousands of deaths. But, through error and openings, independence was given to Washington. Now get this, Washington never willfully wanted to be president. He was chosen unanimously at the Continental Congress. Despite it all, he reluctantly agreed to become the first president in the United States. He took the oath of office on April 30th, 1789, and that set everything in stone. Going by as Mr. President, Washington attended to his responsibilities with care and maturity. Fun fact, he actually didn't live in the White House. He wanted to be on equal terms with the people. Gee, what a guy. In 1791, he signed a bill authorizing Congress to place taxes on distilled spirits, which is a fancy name for alcohol. This caused a lot of protesting in Pennsylvania because they loved their distilled spirits. In 1792, Washington signed the Militia Act. In terms of foreign policy, Washington was neutral when it came to disagreements. He nominated John Jay to become the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He also had an excellent cabinet. Alexander Hamilton was the Secretary of Treasury, and Thomas Jefferson was Secretary of State. People urged Washington to take a third term, but he would have nothing of it. He finally got to retire to his estate at Mount Vernon. He left his trusty Vice President John Adams to become president. At that time, Mount Vernon was in bad shape, so Washington spent most of his retirement time trying to refurbish it. And then, we moved to a tragic day, December 13th, 1799. Washington decides to survey and observe his plants and farms while a raging snowstorm plowed through Virginia. He was fine and dandy that night, but woke the next morning with a terrible cold. It kept getting worse and worse throughout the day, until he passed away that night. This plunged the entire nation into deep mourning. Even Napoleon in Europe ordered that 10 days be reserved for mourning over the loss of George Washington. He sure left a lasting legacy, being known as a renowned military leader, husband, and hero. The important part of Washington's legacy was that he considered the strive for freedom stronger than any single individual. I think the question of if Washington was a good president or not is too simple. Washington was an exemplary model of how future presidents should act. During his presidency, Washington dealt with every issue with maturity and resoluteness. He was humble. He didn't want to be president. He didn't feel like he was worthy to lead a nation, but everyone thought otherwise. He passed laws like the Distilled Spirits Act to benefit and protect the people. During France's war against Great Britain, Washington stayed neutral. He didn't favor war. He favored peace and tranquility. He cared so much, he sent representatives to create treaties that ensured peace. No president can compare to George Washington. He set the way on how future presidents should act, how they should speak, what they should stand for, and how they should lead a nation.